see persons with disability as head of parastatals, as give them ambassadorial positions. We need to see them as cabinet members, and we need diverse representation of persons with disabilities in government appointed positions. Basically, that's what that news was all about. Well, thanks for staying tuned, and so much appreciation goes to Jemima Paul. Always a pleasure having you. It's Disability Inclusion on the Network Service of Radio Nigeria. And on today's edition, we are talking about access to medical rehabilitation for persons with physical disabilities. So, if you're a person with a physical disability, this is an opportunity for you to ask your questions, to get better clarification about your condition, and basically just bring your suggestion to the topic of discussion for today. And we have two guests with us. They are from the Nigeria Society of Physiotherapy, Dr. Nnamdi Eze, the FCT chairman, and Dr. Ayo Abioye. So many thanks for joining us too, Dr. Nnamdi and Dr. Abioye. So now let's talk about some challenges that individuals with physical disabilities face in terms of seeking access to medical rehabilitation services in Nigeria. I know you've mentioned a few like logistics. Dr. Abioye also hampered on untrained professionals. But do we have like any other major challenge that could pose a threat to access to medical rehabilitation for persons with physical disability?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a challenge for us, especially in the areas of even getting the requisite training for the medical rehabilitation professionals. Okay. Because I had a discussion with somebody with physical disability one time, and this time it's I think there is this cerebral palsy issue. It's on the rise, and we found out that only about 5 physicians were trained. Possibly about 5 physicians were trained in physical rehabilitation.
Sorry to go short.
Yes.
Do we have a specific number, or do we have data about number of trained physiotherapists in Nigeria?
Yeah, sure. Dr. Ayo mentioned the data we have from Medical Rehabilitation Therapists Board. We have about 2,000 physiotherapists
in the whole Nigeria.
And of course, a lot of, as we can see, the situation in the country, a lot of people are already outside Nigeria. And
okay, we have most of our physiotherapists now traveling now.
Good, exactly. So I wanted to arrive at something, and my discussion with the disabled person, it was all about when he goes into the hospital, nobody understands him. Are you getting me? So you can see that of the right professionals to handle them.
Yeah, go ahead.
You can
go ahead, please.
So you can see the lack of the professionals on ground to handle people with these problems. So that has put in a lot of space into it. So that's a big challenge on one hand. And of course, earlier I mentioned about the logistical challenge, whereby people who are disabled mainly live far from town, and accessing facilities that provide a rehabilitation service may also be an issue. Then you have the attitudinal problem. A lot of people with disability, attitude from the people with disability.
Okay.
Some of them see themselves as, I can only benefit from charity. So they've accepted that role. They've accepted that, God has done this thing to them, and it feels like nobody can help them. So I just better stay wherever I am, stay in my village, stay in my house, not even bother about, going to the hospital or even seeking a medical rehabilitation professional. Then, most importantly, you could see that we don't have the necessary data for even the government to make adequate policies on how to help these people. I was going through a research, and I found out that close to about 1 billion people all over the world are suffering with some level of physical disability. And 80% of that data reflects people in the low and middle income countries, of course, which Nigeria falls into. But you only see people with disability on the streets. Of course, when you are driving by traffic, you see
Mm.
somebody, maybe someone who is deaf, someone who cannot move. That gives us a picture of what it looks like. But what we are saying is up 80% of 1 billion people. That tells you that we have a lot of numbers.
Mm.
So the data to even make adequate policy for them is not available, because if that data has really reflected that number, that lack, that need, and the lack of the professionals, you see, the government should do more in trying to train more medical rehabilitation professionals, invest more in medical rehabilitation, encourage community-based rehabilitation, because just like I said, people with disability may find it more difficult coming in into the community, into institutional
Okay,
based
so we take the
environment.
services
So
to
we have
them.
to take the services to them. So when we're able to do that, we find out that we're able to close a lot of gap that may be a problem.
Okay. 0705 149 3324 or 0915 091 0482. The WhatsApp number is 0908 875 7496. Now, Dr. Abiyoyi, how does the lack of access to infrastructure affect the rehabilitation process for persons with physical disability?
Um, Lack of access is a very big problem for people with disabilities because the present uh, infrastructure in the country today
Mm.
is not taking cognizance of disability, because sometimes you just imagine there are no ramps, lifts, and other access based facilities that the can help people living with disabilities to really move around so that they could even be able to access this
Mm.
care we are talking about. Um, Thankfully to the president of today,
Mm.
who has thought it wise to assent to the bill of
He only has like one day left, so go ahead. That's only light and
people
yeah.
living with disability.
Mm.
It has become an offense for even designers, infrastructural designers, not to incorporate people with disabilities in their design.
Mm.
And that is about 1 million naira fine for any infrastructural development that is devoid of access to people living with disability. So with time, I believe that this will improve.
Mm.
But when you consider the real assets for people living with disability to accessing medical rehabilitation services, most times they are impaired or barriered by
Physical
their
structures.
the structure,
Mm.
to the point that the places where the even the in present design in the hospital today, you see that the physiotherapy department, the location may even be in a place
But
that is
if
not
that should
accessible.
be a thing of concern. Now, I thank God you mentioned that. Now, what's the role of your organization in making sure that at least let's counter that problem? I mean,
Okay. Okay. So
it's very specific, yes.
let me say something. In August 10, 2017, thereabouts, the Nigerian Society of Physiotherapy, more like the pediatric section, specialty group, took it upon themselves. I think we hosted a program at Bayelsa House in Central area, and we launched CHIP. That's talking about child, find a child and provide the necessary intervention program. So
Mm.
CIIP, Child Find Intervention Program.
Mm.
Then we also launched the CAAD, that is Care and Integration for Adults and Adolescents Living with Disability.
Mm.
And we talked about some of all those challenges. It's just like Dr. Ayo said earlier, it's recently we're beginning to see special parks for disabled people.
Mm.
And these days, you even see people park their cars even when they are not disabled. And he talked about the fine, as a result of the disability bill that was recently signed.
Mm.
But we need to take it a lot more serious, because in everything that happens, there should be a need for political will, collaborating with the professional bodies, Okay, now we physiotherapists in Nigeria, we have a program that we are seeking to, use to close the gap because of the number of children with cerebral palsy we see. Because of course, that's a major physical disability issue that we have around us. So if we thought it wise to do that, and also putting it to the government to look at it as our own side of the story to help and make it a lot more easier for us. And when it comes to the medical model, we what all we do, it's dependent on the level of training that we get. We know these
But do
things.
you need any level of training that a hospital, for instance, that have maybe few physiotherapists, and for
Yes.
instance, there is no access to, like the physical structure is not even accessible. Is that something
This
that
is
should be appalling right now?
Yes,
Like,
that's
it's
a
not something
challenge
we are not
actually.
we are
But
supposed to be
it's
doing.
not even only in the hospitals, it's everywhere.
Mm.
Of course, walking into the building to this place, you could find that okay, there is a ramp on one
Yes,
side.
at the
And I
entrance.
know there are some buildings you walk in, they just put like wood,
Mm.
it's temporal, so people don't want. But in the hospitals, of course, the architects and the structural engineers,
Mm.
binding from what the law says,
Mm.
and disabled people also coming out to say, we have a right, we need to be included.
Mm.
Because organizing telling us to come to an environment that doesn't even speak or appeal to us, because will
It's
I come
discriminating.
good? So you're discriminating against us without even saying it. So whenever a new building is constructed in the hospital, I think, by the intervention of different professional bodies and of course the medical community understanding that this is a big problem, if even though not because of the bill, but
Mm.
you know that you need these people to come into your facility as patients. So a whole lot has gone, and I think a whole lot has changed right now. Because the hospital I work in, of course, we've made provisions for ramps, we've made
Okay.
provisions for access rails for people with
Mm.
challenges in different forms to be able to access our
Okay, we
service.
just hope that every other hospital around the nooks and cranny of this country, Nigeria, take from that example, from your hospital. Well, thanks for staying tuned. It's still Disability Inclusion on Network Service of Radio Nigeria, and we're talking about medical rehabilitation for persons with physical disabilities. Call the number 0705 149 3324 or 0915 0482. You can also send a WhatsApp message to 0908 875 7496. Stay with us as we go on a quick break.
Check the camera, maybe in 30 minutes it goes off. So you can.
It's on. So to come out, we don't call them disabled people. We don't say disabled people or persons living with disability. We say persons with disability,
Persons with disability.
not disabled people. Yes.
We used to have one term, PLWD.
It's PWD now.
Okay, it's PWD. Okay, thank you for that.
What is it?
So, Lynn, if we are not talking, you can off it. Then when we start talking, you can on it again. That's what I wanted to say.
Okay. You don't have Twitter?
That same red button.
Don't worry. You have actually a laptop. Jennifer.
Mm. Owambe is a popular Yoruba phrase that signifies, going for an event or partying or, wedding. You know it. Saturdays are for weddings, all right? If you attended one today, we want to wish you a happy weekend and also happy Children's Day. Did I forget to mention that specifically for children with disabilities, happy Children's Day to you. You matter, we love you, and we are definitely creating a bright future with you, for you rather, and making sure that our environment, our country, Nigeria, definitely does not discriminate against you. So yes, that is what this program is about: disability inclusion. Happy Children's Day to every child rather with disability. Yes, it's still the station, Radio Nigeria, Disability Inclusion of Network Service of Radio Nigeria, and we are here live with our guests, from the Nigeria Society of Physiotherapy, the FCT chairman, Dr. Nnamdi Eze, and also Dr. Ayo Abioye. So far, they've been talking about the level of accessibility to medical rehabilitation for persons with disabilities, the challenges they face, and also what we need to do, and also what they need to do to improve, this access and help combat some of these barriers. Kindly call 0705 149 3324 or 0915 091 048. I know you might be having some issues, might be having some issues trying to reach us at the telephone, on our social media handles, on Facebook at TAF Africa. So once you open your Facebook app, just go to your search bar and type TAF, TAF Africa. And we're streaming live. You can watch us and definitely read your comments. All right. So ensure you do that. So let's go back to our guests, who are who is the chairman, the FCT chairman and vice chairman of the Nigeria Society for Physiotherapy. So you're talking about some policies and initiatives that that we need to address to look at the issues of access to medical rehabilitation. So yeah.
Yes, I was hammering mainly on, training and of course
Okay.
recruiting more people.
Okay, so we need policies that will definitely
Of course,
reinforce some of
reinforce
these.
training of
Yes.
medical professionals, investment in medical rehabilitation, so that it can help improve treatment for people living with disability.
Okay, so let's talk about the government now and health organizations. What's the collaboration level? What can be done to improve, access? Because when we talk about this access, someone might be thinking of the financial implication now to this. It's one thing to know that you have a problem and you want to fix it, but it's another thing to know that you're incapable because you don't have what it takes, like money now, to be able to help you to gain this access. How do you think governments can collaborate or synergize with health organizations to make sure that probably medical rehabilitation services are being cut down to like almost the lowest level, where anybody with disability can have access to medical services or rehabilitation in every part of the country?
Thank you. Um, we just came out from a program on universal health coverage
Mm,
where no one should be left behind. That you are disabled, that should not prevent you from having a story that you are living with one form of disability, should not prevent you from accessing healthcare. So, and I think the World Health Organization has thought it wise that everybody should be covered in terms of seeking for help.
sorry, can you explain that in details? When you mean covered, how do you mean?
Okay, there is this policy of the World Health Organization talking about universal health coverage.
Yes.
For all,
Okay.
where it shouldn't be maybe because you are not having funds or because you are disabled or any, there should be no challenges to accessing healthcare. So it's one of the goals that which is captured on the SDG, Sustainable Development Goal, where the universal health coverage is on the front burner. So I was trying to just put some light into what the government of the country has done. Uh, in the course of my research, I come to terms that it's not that we don't have policies for people living with disability or people with disability, but the major problem is that a lot of ministries, like the Ministry of Women Affairs and Social Development, Ministry of Women Affairs, Ministry of Health, even Ministry of Communication, they all have frameworks. They have a policy on people living with disability. But I think at this point now, these policies have to be unified and domiciled holistically so that it will affect everybody living with disability and it will also improve the access to rehabilitation care. Um, of recent, there were trainings on universal health coverage, but one thing I like to say is that in the Sustainable Development Goal, it was not captured. Rehabilitation was omitted.
Mm.
So on that line, the World Health Organization now did a call for action where they now put it as a rehabilitation 2030, where they try to correct that omission and they now make it now that rehabilitation is one of the key services that will help to or eye coverage.
Mm.
So where they explicitly put out the emphasis and the machineries that they will use to achieve this with the Global Alliance on Rehabilitation, which even the World Congress of Physical Therapy president is the vice chair of that committee globally. So with this, it's become imperative that all ministries of health, both at the states and the local government level,
Mm.
national and state level, should domesticate rehabilitation services in
Okay.
their Ministry of Health so that everybody will be carried along and it won't be a barrier for anybody that wants to access medical rehabilitation services.
Okay, if you're just joining us, we're talking about improving access to medical rehabilitation for persons with physical disabilities in Nigeria. 0705 149 3324 0915 091 0482. Now, Dr. Nnamdi, do we have some innovative approaches or even technologies that can be used to overcome some of these barriers? Do you think it's something we can come up with, or is it already available now?
Okay, so before I answer your question, I would
Mm.
just like to chip in something.
Okay.
You see, he's just talked about universal health coverage
Mm.
and the need to provide some level of help or health for
Mm.
all. Healthcare is a right. We have
Mm.
to look at it like that. Then, when it comes with persons with disability, there is this linkage between disability and poverty. Kind of, I will explain. When someone is disabled with some form of physical disability or another, there is, because of what is obtainable, there is some level of exclusion.
Mm.
The person doesn't feel empowered. There are some level of social denials. Like, you could go to some organizations, you find out that persons with disabilities don't even get a job. It's too competitive getting admissions and stuff like that.
Mm.
And they end up in the villages doing menial jobs that could barely support their daily life.
Mm.
So these people become so poor, and accessing healthcare becomes a big challenge too, because sometimes you need to pay. So we are also at the forefront of looking at how there can be an insurance policy. You know, Having an insurance, some of us might understand insurance as HMOs,
Yes.
providing when you go into the hospital, you don't need to physically pay. But how many disabled people or people with disability have access to that? Now, people with insurance may be people who have jobs. But we talked about people with disability not even being qualified, and people not, you walking into an organization thank goodness that there are a lot of skills that people can learn online these days. How many people with disability even have access to those things? So insurance is key if we want to do something at the policy level to incorporate and get more of these people, so that when you have the right professionals on ground who understand them, you can even see people who say, okay, because I know I don't need so much to, because I know government has covered for my care, I can easily go. Then going to your question, technology, there has been a lot of technology, but this time around, I said we want to move away from institution-based rehabilitation to providing some level of community-based rehabilitation, because there is no way everybody, how many teaching hospitals do we have? How many general hospitals do we have that can provide that? How do we make primary health care centers more viable? How can we make health centers in the community more viable to provide that? The government may not be able to invest in high-end technologies in some of all those little places. But when you have the right professionals who understand this problem, going there, exactly, making it look more like a community engagement whereby the person, let me give you a typical example. How do we use locally made or locally readily available materials to make a bandage? Or how do we use, some of us who, like I played a lot, so I think I had some fracture when I was growing up. So I can remember not going to the hospital because my neighbor, who his father transferred his skills of setting bones, just got some sticks, got some bandage, wrapped it around my hand. And of course, I have my hands, I'm moving, I'm a physiotherapist, I'm able to practice with it. So how do we train more people to have those kind of crafts so that, we are not waiting for these disabled people to go into big hospitals to access technology before they can be treated? So little things like that. There is something we call parallel bar. Parallel bar is just a stick, two frames that enable somebody to learn how to walk again. I will be talking about walking because that's my domain kind of. How do you get a bamboo in the community? Set a bamboo apart so that it can replicate that kind of parallel bar. A parallel bar may cost about 2 million to purchase. A bamboo just costs about going to the bush and cutting down the trees and setting it up for. So when you do that, the emphasis will not be so much on the technology, because look at Nigeria healthcare budget. How many percent goes to health? But when you talk about technology and getting equipment or
But where can the CSOs now? Because at the end of the day, I mean, we want adequate medical healthcare service. We want a service providing whatever. I don't even know how to qualify it, because with all of these things you're saying, I understand the need to improvise. I understand the need to, they say half bread is better than none and all of that. But we need to get to that stage in Nigeria where our healthcare, services, or even the facilities that we have, the equipment that we need, are adequately provided for, be it from government and other CSOs. So I know you've been talking about the government a lot, and I believe to an extent that they're actually coming into reality, into what this cause is all about. But how can we get the CSOs now involved? How do we encourage donations? How do we call for support? What can be done basically to make sure that this aspect of disability inclusion is adequately taken care of?
Okay, so when it comes to what you've mentioned, there are principles that guide whatever it is that you want to do, and that falls in the arena of advocacy and empowerment. Now the CSO have a lot to do, which is what they have always done: usual community engagement, engaging with the government at various levels, understanding the barriers and the limitations so that they can push. Now, organizations like Disabled People's Organization, which is organization set up, is a civil society organization by people with disability who understand where their pain is coming from. So when we organize programs, how do they, participate? And when hospital engagements come up, how do they also participate and put it at the bare that these are the challenges we need. These are a few things that we need done for us to feel,
Okay, let me just
included
give
in what we are doing.
let me give Dr. Abiy an opportunity to talk. Yeah.
Yeah, it has become imperative for civil society organizations and even community-based organizations, faith-based organizations to be involved in this care of people living with disability. It's much more than talking. It's for us all to get involved, and this is the time where we all can be involved. Sometimes I see people in the society, they are wealthy, they want to spend money, and they feel that the only way they could do this is maybe to make noise through parties and some other spendings. One thing I want us all to know is that the donor agencies that are helping us in this regard,
Mm.
I think it's high time that Nigerians also should
Mm.
incorporate and be charitable to
Mm.
this cause.
More like inclusivity. We don't like to use the word charitable because
Okay.
yes. Yeah, go
Okay.
ahead quickly.
Okay. So that they too can be involved
Mm.
in a way that they'll be able to help people living with
Mm.
disability.
Mm.
Because when I see uh, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, what they've done, and I believe even if they can't do like that, we could do at least 1%. We
Oh,
have people in the country that can come to this aid in this regard. So
yes.
it's a call that
Okay.
all hands should be on deck for people living with disability
Yes,
in
a
terms of
call.
access and infrastructural.
Yeah.
Uh,
Thank you so much, Dr. Abiyoye. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, if you're just joining us, it's still Disability Inclusion on Network Service of Radio Nigeria. We have less than 10 minutes to call this a wrap. And as usual, we like to give you a message about what the Disability Act states. So, what does the Disability Act say about care? So, Section 21 of the Discrimination Against Persons with Disability Act 2018 mandates the government to provide persons with disabilities free access to adequate health care devoid of discrimination. So it also entitles persons with mental disability to free medical and health services in all public institutions. So thank you so much for staying tuned. It's sad that we couldn't take any call for today. I don't know why, but hopefully next week will be another time for you to participate. So our star of the week is Mahmoud Abdullahi. Do stay with us. Thank you so much, Jemima Paul, Disability Inclusion on the Network Service of Radio Nigeria. And we still have our guests in the studio, the FCT chairman of the Nigeria Society of Physiotherapy and also the vice chairman. That is Dr. Nnamdi Eze and Dr. Ayo Abioye. So now let's talk about some sustainability of efforts now to improve access to medical services in the long term. Like, what's your recommendation? What do you have to say about implementing this process?
um, I believe the best sustainability plan for people living with disability is to institutionalize rehabilitation care into the mainstream health care system of Nigeria.
Hmm.
Every levels of government, we have a rehabilitation caregiving available, and also have the space. All the site of the public accessibility is also institutionalized. It has become an offense to discriminate uh, person with disability, and that the fine is 100,000 naira where you discriminate, maybe in the line of job
Mm.
uh, or
Yeah,
other
we
opportunities.
sorry, we have our first caller for today. Hello, good evening. Hello. Hello. Seriously, I lose you, but so Dr. Ayo, kind of.
Okay, so medical rehabilitation here or service in Nigeria, when it becomes institutionalized, the services will be available to all.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Namdi, would you like to add to what he said?
Okay, yes, so it's important. In 2019, the Medical Rehabilitation Therapists Board.
Sorry. Hello, good evening. Good evening. Go ahead, please. Yes, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, please. Hey, hello. Seems like you're having network difficulties. Hello, can you hear me? All right. I'm sincerely sorry if you've been unable to reach us since you commenced this program. I don't know. I think we have some network issues, but like I keep encouraging you, anytime you try to reach us and you can't reach us via the telephone, all right, it's okay. All you need to do is follow us on our social media handles. We always stream live most of the time, and drop in your comments. Your name will definitely be there, and leave a message on our WhatsApp number. All right, and we'll definitely read out your message. So,
Yes. Oh,
Dr. Eze, go ahead.
yeah, so I was talking about in 2019
Mm.
when the Medical Rehabilitation Therapists Board organized the second international conference on rehabilitation.
Mm.
And one key message that we were pushing then was how do government invest more in rehabilitation centers?
Mm.
When you look around, there are few rehabilitation centers to support the need on ground. There is an estimate that I found out recently. WHO said about 24 million Nigerians have one form of disability or the other, of course, which might include physical, mental, and so many other areas. Now, physical disability being majority, as it's been stated there clearly too, rehabilitation centers that will have the right professionals, the trained and specialized physiotherapists, occupational therapists, speech therapists, prosthetists and orthotists, physicians in the field of rehabilitation who could man this facility to make it so it becomes a lot easier that you now have the right, the round, the round peg in the round hole instead of someone going to the hospital and feeling the doctor or the professional doesn't understand them. So training is key. We need to invest more. We need to toe the line of building so many rehabilitation centers. When you go to countries like United States and London, like you talked about, you have a lot of rehabilitation centers on ground. I'll give you a typical example. When someone suffers stroke in a typical hospital in Nigeria, there is always an acute care setting, which is the hospital representation. And after that, how does it go back to participating in the society? It's always a challenge.
I think that's
but
like
rehabilitation centers will, not only look at the person in the impairment, which is the loss of one part of the body, but how does that person improve on his activity limitation and of course participate
we are
in
out of time. I'm sure
yes.
you have a lot to say regarding this. I would sincerely like to even hear about it. Well, thank you so much for giving us that brief, highlights about, how to continue an incident of stroke, apart from the fact that you get to meet, the doctor and he takes care of the aspect of, recuperating. You also need to follow up, on the issue. I'm sorry if you're unable to reach us via our telephone lines. We sincerely apologize. That's the end of this program, which came to you live from the network service of Radio Nigeria. The program is brought to you by TAF Africa and funded by the European Union through its support to democratic governance in Nigeria. Many thanks to this producer Stephen Esabo, and also to the engineers on duty Faru Shuaibu, and Usman Mohammed has been the studio manager for tonight. Until next time, my name is Jennifer Ogo, urging you to have a splendid weekend and also happy Children's Day to every child with disability. We love you. All right, our next program on our lineup at the top of the hour is Youth Connect. Bye bye.